This is The Grain, and today we're going to talk about this reality show that everyone's been talking about, Love is Blind. And we're not going to go into much detail about what this show's about. If you Most of you've probably seen it already, and if you haven't, you can look it up. But I'll provide a brief overview of what this show's about before we really get into this whole series that we watched within what, 2 days?
Like a day and a half. I mean, it was one after another.
I mean, because everyone's been talking about it, and the show pretty much is about finding love and determining whether or not, quote, love is blind. So males and females were paired into rooms, and they couldn't see each other, they could only hear each other, and they had to develop a relationship solely based on the personal emotional connection. uh, and so the group of men, they stayed in their own kind of housing units, and the women stayed on their own side. And when it was time for them to have dates, they were paired into pods. And it was kind of like speed dating, and where the men and the women would go into different rooms and spend time talking to each other to see if there was a connection. And if there was, then they would try to develop a relationship. And over time, really like over a few days, they determined whether or not they wanted to get married. And most of the men, or several men, decided to propose to several women. And that's how the show started. After several groups or couples were determined, then they were able to see each other for the first time. There was a big reveal. And then afterwards, the couples went to Mexico for, I think, a week or so to just kind of get to know each other. After that, they moved into an apartment setting together, and they lived with each other. And then by the end of the month, then they decided at the altar of their wedding whether or not they wanted to get married. And this is after having met their family members and friends, and really thought about whether or not this person that they met initially without seeing them is the person that they wanted to spend their life with. And so I will talk about the show and the couples that were on the show and some of the social kind of issues that are related to this show that I think might not be as popular or discussed about. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So I guess the first couple we'll talk about is Kenny and Kelly. And so Kenny and Kelly, they were kind of like almost a forgotten couple in the series. I mean, you would see them maybe for a few minutes during each episode, but for the most part, they weren't really highlighted or focused on quite as much. It seemed like sort of just like the normal couple. Saying they were, like everything was very stable. They were doing a good job. Saying they were going to end up just being, getting married, and it was going to be nice and smooth. But then as the series kind of progressed, I mean, we kind of saw like some of the cracks, sort of, in a relationship. And so like, with Kelly, she was a little bit older. I think she was like 33, and Kenny was 28. And that was another thing I kind of noticed in the show too. Is like a lot of the women were like older than the guys. So I guess these are a lot of women I think probably like partying and stuff in their 20s, and now it's like, oh crap, I'm about to turn in my 30s now. I want to have a baby. I want to have get married, and time's running out, and so they probably want to do this show. But Kelly definitely kind of fell into that group, and so her big thing, it seemed like, was that she was just big on looks. So like, like towards the end, the last few episodes, she kept harping on how this guy wasn't what she was used to. He didn't have the same kind of look that the guys she usually goes for, blah, blah, blah. And, it was just funny me hearing all this. I was looking at her, I was like, you ain't really all that, but,
Oh my god.
Seriously, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. She was okay looking, but, she just had like, these high standards, and he wasn't the kind of guy she goes for normally. So it was interesting to me that she was finding that reason to knock him. What were your thoughts on that?
On the couple, I mean, I didn't really have any thoughts about them. I feel like we really didn't get to see their relationship blossom, and maybe it's because the producers thought they were boring. But and I kind of did think they were kind of boring, just all together. I mean, I nothing really from them is memorable other than the fact that they didn't stay together. And you didn't really get to know like their story and like see how they got together, and probably just because the producers thought that their storyline was kind of boring as well. But I didn't really see much of what was going on with their relationship until the end when Kelly decided not to marry the Kenny guy. From the looks of it, it seemed as though their families really were into each other, that they got along. It seemed like Kelly's family wanted her to get
Oh
married,
yeah,
and
especially the mom.
right, and that
I think the mom
the
wanted to marry him herself.
and Kenny's and Kenny's family got along with Kelly's family, and so it was kind of unfortunate that Kelly decided that, but just because he was a brunette, and that, or that just because he was blonde actually, and that he didn't have as many abs, that she didn't want to marry him. But I mean, I guess this couple definitely goes to show you that love is not blind, and because
Ah,
Kelly couldn't get past the fact that he wasn't physically in the shape that she wanted, and the guy that she kind of dated, which seemed as though, based off of the way her family came across, that most of the guys that she dated weren't really good for her, or ended in, I mean, clearly, since they all ended up in her being single, and based on the reunion show, she's still single. So I mean,
and Kenny's with somebody now. Yeah, Kenny's found somebody.
right. So I think with this couple, the woman was pretty shallow, in the sense of that she was really focusing on physical characteristics as they after they met.
Right. And the irony is that, when physical attraction, that stuff is very important. You got to have that. But then once you get married, though, that's not the most important thing. It's on the list, but you have other things that, are just as or more important. A lot of it's just about how you get along with the person on a day to day basis. But, I thought it was interesting because, a lot of times I think you see women, get into their 30s, like a Kelly or something like that. We oftentimes hear about how, well, it's hard to find a good guy, or guys don't want to get married and all this other stuff. But then you see guys like Kenny out there who, who's in his 20s. I mean, this guy was, he was clearly looking for a serious relationship. And she was the one that was being very nitpicky about it. But, I mean, I think at the end of the day, maybe she just wasn't the marrying type. Maybe she just didn't want to really do that. But that was interesting. That was a curveball, because I really didn't expect when they got to the altar that she was, she was saying some things like that, but her sister was trying to like push her into marrying him and stuff. And, it seemed like, it seemed like everybody was doing everything he could to get her with him. And so I was surprised that she took that hard left. But Kenny handled it, like a G. I mean, he did a good job. I thought, after she walked off, she just walked off the stage or whatever, he stood there, he gave a speech saying, hey, look, thank you guys for coming out there. I mean, he handled it, very, very professionally, very, very maturely. And his mom was giving him that. I mean, her mom was giving him that look. He was like, wow, he's really impressive. I was like she about to dump her husband and get with him. I was like, dang, man, all right, man, mama. Right. So yeah, so I mean, I agree that they weren't the most, exciting couple, but that ending was definitely a twist.
Yeah, it was definitely a twist. I definitely didn't expect her to say no, especially, but I kind of had a feeling she was probably going to say no because they didn't have sex before the marriage, and she was trying not to like have sex with him at all, and she just seemed as though she wasn't really comfortable towards the end just being with him. So she, I don't know. I don't, and I honestly, I don't really care about this couple.
Right.
Like, I mean, they were so boring. Like, I didn't really care about their
But
story.
there were 2 points on this that I think are kind of interesting, and this will, kind of come up later on. But well, one, Kelly is it turns out she was longtime friends with another person on this show who we'll talk about later. But they both seem to have similar attitudes. But then the other part you just brought up is how like Kelly was coming up with all these excuses for not having sex with Kenny throughout the show, and she was talking about how, oh well, she was concerned about not being having an orgasm. She was coming up with all these excuses. But I think the one thing I think we learned from the show is that honestly, oftentimes with women, if they're attracted to you, it doesn't really matter about how they're thinking. They're going to go with how their emotions are. And so if they're really into you, then it wouldn't be a case of, well, I'm not going to have sex for all these reasons. That usually overrides it. So that to me was a theme where as soon as the women weren't willing to have sex or come up with these excuses, you kind of knew they weren't really feeling the guy. All right, so I think that's enough for Kenny and Kelly. More than enough. So let's move on to the next couple, Damian and Gigi. So Damian and Gigi, this was another one that was a shocker to me. So Gigi apparently, she was ready to get married. She said I do, and then Damien said I don't. So it was interesting because at first, he was crying when she was walking down the aisle, and I thought it were tears of joy. I thought he was just so choked up, like she was so beautiful. I'm just can't marry this woman. Apparently, it was just like, oh, I can't believe I gotta do this. I'm gonna have to give her the Fredo Corleone boat ride. I'm gonna have to put her down. So that was. Well, yeah. Some people have seen The Godfather. All right. So if you know The Godfather, you know Fredo Corleone. What happens to him? But basically,
Put
they.
her down in the sense of like killing somebody. I don't
Well,
think
yeah. I
it's
mean,
that serious.
well, I mean,
It's just
emotionally,
a
yes.
relationship.
Well, emotionally, yes. I mean, that's how she felt. She starts running down the road in her wedding dress. She almost broke her neck. Slipping. So, but yeah. So that was a surprise. But I think he made the right decision on that. What do you
Yeah,
think?
and let me provide a little context out of the inappropriateness of the analogy. But with Damien and Gigi, I'm not sure what the age differences was between them. I felt
It's only
like,
about 2 years.
but was
Yeah.
he older than
He
her?
was older. She was only 25,
And he was
like
like
27.
27.
Yeah.
Okay, so they were a little difference in age, and she, I believe, is from Spain, somewhere in
Mhm.
Europe, and he is, I mean,
He's American.
a
He's
white
like a
man,
regular guy.
and it seemed as though you could tell from the beginning that he was a little bit more concerned about being on a reality television show. He didn't get approval from his family. His parents didn't want to meet Gigi. I think they likened her to like a reality TV whore, and they're like,
Yeah.
"We hope you're not marrying a reality TV whore." And Gigi, kind of understandably, was very upset about that. It seemed as though she had a very hard time kind of dealing with conflict, and almost to the extent that she liked experiencing conflict. She liked getting her point across. And honestly, when they were having their arguments, it was hard for me to follow. I was like, what exactly are you upset about?
Aren't those most couple arguments though? I mean, you really start thinking about it, like just what are you arguing about? What's the issue?
Right. And I guess to her, she knew exactly what she was mad about. But it seemed as though they argue about the most stupidest things. I mean, like, I guess for Damien, he had a little bit of, like, he would get mad at her for being on social media all the time. Gigi would be mad at him for what?
Right.
Well, I don't even know. But either way, they would argue. And Gigi said some very mean things about Damien in regards to their sex life, which, I mean, that's so ratchet. And a lot of times when we as women say things to men that may or may not hurt their feelings, that could really ruin the relationship, especially if, I mean, I just think that women know a lot of times know how to get to the core of tearing a man down, and then we wonder why we get left at the altar and we have to run away down the streets of Atlanta. I just think that they had a lot of physical like connection. I don't know, that got in the way, I think, of some of their relationship and their ability to work through conflict, because I think whenever they got mad at each other, they would just have sex, and I don't think Damien liked that. Because at the end of the day, when he said no to her, he said that he didn't feel as though she was ready. And I think one point when they were having their arguments, Damien said that he feels as though whenever they get mad at each other, she just wants to have sex and not really kind of work through the problem. I mean, do you remember that was being said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Their arguments are kind of hard to follow, but I will go back to what you were saying before. So we just gotta say exactly what she said. I mean, so it's basically they were sitting there, and she was in the kitchen, he was in the other room, and she was like, "Well, you know how you always every time we have sex, you always say it was the best sex you've ever had. You notice how I never returned the compliment." And I was just like, "Whoa!" It's like she never says the same thing. So that's the kind of stuff that you don't really get past. That's a tough one to get past. And I thought was, what she's saying right now, it's not gonna really help you get what you want. Because I'm sure in his position, she was just kind of like, well, damn, now I don't even want to deal with you after all that. So that, yeah, like you were saying, I mean, you start saying that kind of stuff, that's how you really tear up the relationship. Because no one wants to be around somebody after saying stuff like that. So that, I also think that was just pretty much counterproductive for what she was trying to do.
Right. And so their relationship was okay to me. One thing that I did not like about this couple was their proposals. And I mean, I think most people thought maybe that it was cute, but to me, I thought it was just the most cheesiest, corniest proposals at all. I think it was just super dramatic, and I think that's kind of what, if I could like label this couple, I would label them as like dramatic.
Right.
Like it's
Even by
unnecessarily
their show standards.
right, unnecessarily dramatic. The Damien had a bow, and then here's a box, and Gigi said, "No, I'm gonna propose to you. Will you marry me?" At the end, Gigi sent him a box saying, "Here's some socks just in case you have cold feet." Damien said, "Yeah, I'll put these socks
I'm
on,
gonna need them.
but I'm gonna say no to you anyway. So I guess I do have cold feet, so those socks don't work for me." So it's just, I don't know. It was just very corny to me. I mean, if you really think about it, the whole show was kind of corny,
Right.
but like this couple was pretty corny to me at the end. I didn't really dislike them, but I didn't really watch the show for them.
Yeah, I think just watching them, it kind of reminds you of like really when you're in a relationship or you're married or whatever. I mean, I think we all got to try to find ways not to argue as much because just watching them go at it, like that was exhausting. Just looking at them, I was just like, dang man, this is tiring. I don't even want to deal with all that. So a lot of stuff, and then lots of your arguing about is kind of stupid, anyways. When you step back from it. But yeah, I thought he did the right thing though. I mean, he was very. It's like he was very wise to kind of know that hey, she's too young right now. She's not ready for this. I don't want to deal with all this every day. And I think by him doing that, she was mad initially, but later on, apparently, she reached back out to him and they got back together. I think there's a part of her that respected that because I think deep down, I think she knew that she didn't really want to get married just yet and they weren't ready. And I think the fact that he took that lead and was able to go out and put himself out there, knowing that there's going to be a lot of backlash against him and do the right thing, I think ultimately when she got over her feelings, she respected that and that's why she came back to him.
I did see her family's reaction, and it was so sad when she ran off and her mom chased her, and she was saying in Spanish like, why didn't you say no first, and crying. It was just that was heartbreaking.
Well, the
to
dad didn't look too
see.
broken up about it. It was he was actually quite happy once he said no. It was like
Right. And then just having her run off and take a little tumble. I mean, it was just like, dang, like this is, I mean, a lot of people might be thinking this is staged or not real, but I mean, it was real enough for her to run off and have a tumble. So
yeah,
I mean,
Ty Fall was real. I know that. Oh man. All right. Well, yeah. So I guess long story short on them, I think they weren't ready to get married just yet, but apparently they're back together now. Probably for the best. So the next couple was Barnett and Amber. And this is when it started to heat up a little bit. So they kind of cast Barnett early on as kind of like the player, so he was kind of the one who was talking to all the girls like Barnett and all this other stuff in the during the whole like partition scene before they could see each other. And so he was kind of going back and forth between Amber and the other girl, Jessica. And so he ultimately ended up going with Amber and proposing to her. And so I kind of called this one right from the jump. I kind of felt like, Amber's personality, she was kind of a little bit tomboyish, but she was just kind of like, kind of just say whatever comes to mind, kind of off the cuff or whatever. And, I kind of felt like with Barnett's kind of, joking, smart ass type personality, I thought they probably would hit it off, and they did. And so they end up getting married. But what'd you think about this couple?
I was shocked that Barnett said or agreed to marry her. He had cold feet on the day of the wedding, and he um and he wasn't answering her phone calls on the day of the wedding or the night beforehand, and he even told her he was having cold feet. So I was kind of shocked at the fact that he actually said I do to Amber. Amber was in it to win it from the jump, and I think that this couple really showed the difference in class to an extent. I'm not sure what Barnett's money situation was. I think I read somewhere that he does have debt himself. But just looking at her family in comparison to Barnett's family, even though they are both white, I mean, we all know that social class varies in this country. And so it was interesting to see how Barnett reacted to her family, how Amber's family reacted to Barnett, how Barnett's family reacted to Amber. And Amber seems to be the type of person who don't care about what anyone thinks about her. And in some ways that can be a great thing, but it seems as though she just was just talking a lot off the cuff, and the camera got some real good shots of Barnett's family looking at her like she was insane, but Barnett did not care about that. He was he was stuck with her to the end, which I think says a lot about kind of who he is, and maybe how, like, the fact that he might not even care about what his family thinks, and he's gonna love whoever he decides to love. So with this couple, I thought that they were interesting to see, especially based on how they got together. And I mean, I think it's hard for us to talk about Amber and Barnett without talking about Mark and Jessica.
Right. Well, I can talk a little bit because I thought their dynamic was kind of interesting. Because while they kind of portrayed Barnett early on as kind of being the kind of the playboy type, he also was an engineer. When they showed his family is much more in that like kind of left brain engineering type mindset. They're just kind of looking at her like, why'd you bring this thing, over to us? Because like, what is this? And he was kind of like reverting back to that, like, oh shit, why just bring this person over to. But I think he kind of was drawn to that side of her personality because it was very different from what he grew up as. So I think, a lot of times, it kind of go back to the whole opposite attracts thing. Now, my thought of it is that opposites attract, but I think as far as like being together long term, I think that's when you have problems. I think the more similar you are, it's easier to work together and to get along and long term be together. But I think as far as the initial spark, opposites do attract, and I think that's what happened with them. But my concern with them is I don't think they're going to be together long term, just because the fact that she really has no ambition. She don't want to work. She said she out of the bat. She's like, I want to be a stay at home mom. I can't cook or clean, but I want to be a stay at home mom and drink wine all day, pretty much. So he's off making the money and being an engineer. So I don't know how long that's gonna last. But
and already she at the reunion she was saying that like she looked into getting a divorce because things were a little rocky. So I mean,
where you gonna go? You ain't got no house. Where you gonna live?
So already we know that things are not as perfect as they made it seem at the reunion. Maybe hopefully they're in a good place now. But I honestly, based off of Amber's fiery personality, where I mean she was about to punch homegirl Jessica in the face. So
rightfully so.
I don't see them staying together very long, but they were definitely interesting and entertaining to watch.
Right.
Let's move on to Mark and Jessica. And honestly, this couple was the one that clearly kind of is one of the most popular of the show. I mean, I think most of these couples are popular except for Kenny and Kelly, but I think that this couple was the couple that made the show because they infuriated me. I think Mark even more so than Jessica, honestly. And so this is good. I mean, y'all know the show. Jessica pretty much strung along Mark the entire season. She claims online that she couldn't leave. The producers told her not to leave. I don't know, but another couple broke up and they didn't continue on with the show. So why couldn't she? And Mark's was the most naive person I ever saw. So Jessica had a huge crush on Barnett. And I mean, Barnett kind of led her on initially saying that he would, if no one was there, he would marry her today, or he would propose to her right now. And so Jessica was like, "Oh, I have to get rid of Mark because I definitely want to be a Barnett." And so she pretty much told Mark, "It ain't you." And she went back and they tried to play a game of truth or dare, and Jessica asked him when he said truth, she said, what did she say? Like, are you glad that you want to marry me, or are you still feeling the same way you felt last night? And she had the biggest smile on her face because she was just like, yeah, he gonna say, yeah, I still feel the same way. And then Barnett said, I don't know. And Jessica was completely shocked, and pretty much that was it. She walked out and was very upset, and Jessica was off Barnett's list. And so Jessica really didn't handle that well. Afterwards, she went to other females telling them, like, Barnett's not the guy, don't get with him. She was very upset. And then I guess she decided she still wanted to be on the show. So she said to Mark, you know what? I'll give you a chance. I like you. And Mark said, okay. He ate it up. He didn't care that he was the second fiddle. And that's pretty much how their relationship kind of continued throughout the rest of the show. And it was just so disgusting to watch somebody like just string this man along. And honestly, I pair Mark's naivety to the fact that he's 24 and Jessica was 34 years old. A 34-year-old woman, you know going well, you don't need to be stringing on a 24-year-old young man. I mean, and she was giving him every sign in the world that she doesn't want to be with him. She was just like, I don't know, you're 20, you're in your 20s, you need to live it up. Well, I mean, she had then it was if she didn't want to be with him, she needed to have gotten off the show. She should have said, "It ain't you. Let's get off," because Mark was in to win it for the rest of his life.
Well, the interesting thing about this couple was kind of like watching the sort of devolution of Mark. So the way it started off is initially I was on Team Mark. So like when she comes back, she had already broken up with him. So she comes back into the partition, begging for him to take her back. I thought at this point I was like, all right, Mark, boom, just give her the door slam, move it along. And then old Mark took her back. So I was like, all right, well, they don't see each other. He doesn't have the full picture. He's a young guy. He'll learn from it. But then as the series progressed, and she is just constantly like on Barnett's back, like just sweating this dude, like basically right in front of Mark. And she's like not even willing to like really kiss Mark. She's never excited to be around Mark. She nitpicks him about everything, doesn't want to have sex with him. And yet Mark just keeps on trying like a little puppy dog, just keeps running after her. And I'm like, at some point, dude, I'm just like, where is your self-respect? And, you were saying that she was stringing him along. I almost feel like she wasn't. She was making it blatantly clear to him, honestly, that she didn't want to be with him. But the reason, and again, unfortunately, I think this couple kind of shows, and I think Jessica specifically kind of shows like some of the worst characteristics or attributes of men and women, especially with women, with Jessica. She was very conniving, very manipulative. And honestly, she was just very selfish. I mean, I think the reason she wanted to stay on was specifically so she could get close to Barnett. She knew that if she stays on the show with Mark, she knew Mark was going to be there, then that gives her more opportunities to be around Barnett. And so and that's exactly what she did. And just every time she got a chance, she would run up behind him. And then Mark showed the worst characteristics of guys with good intentions, but you can just be like you were saying, just very naive and maybe just have low self-esteem to where you just let these women just do whatever they want and they don't respect you for it. So that was a shame.
And at the end of the day, this is a reality show, so we can't really. I mean, it was produced and edited, so we don't know exactly what these individuals were or weren't trying to do. It's just out there, but from what the showmakers wanted us to see, I mean, Mark just looked pitiful. I mean, I just don't understand how he himself wouldn't have caught the fact that
she literally told him that Barnett was sexy. She wanted to be with him. You can't make it much. You can't make it.
Well, but then the next day she said that she was drunk and that she didn't mean to say that. But right, but she, going out, she wasn't that drunk, and the fact that even if you are drunk, I mean, your thoughts are your thoughts. And a lot of times we do say what we mean when we're drunk. We just have the ability to say it when we are drunk as opposed to being sober. So, I mean, it was just shameful. And I honestly, as I was watching the show, I was like, I need to hurry up and watch this show so I can see what the internet has said about this couple. And man, y'all have dragged this girl and Mark to an extent. I mean, you dragged a lot of people on this show, but y'all have dragged Jessica. I really wish for her the best. I hope she's getting herself together, but hopefully this is a learning experience for her to understand, even if you are on a reality TV show, you can't just treat people any kind of way and be selfish to just string people along for what. If someone doesn't want you, they don't want you. And I will give Barnett credit to the fact that he didn't give in to Jessica. Yeah, he might have slightly led her on at the beginning, but when he decided that he didn't want to be with her, he said he didn't want to be with her. And every time she tried to kind of get with him, he was just like, yep. And I still like to be with Amber. I really want to be with Amber and not with you. And Jessica just couldn't couldn't deal with that. She really, really couldn't deal. I don't want to kind of harp on her looks or anything like that, but I did notice that throughout the show, she looked kind of older and older.
Yeah.
And I did learn that from the show, she was dealing with some stuff out, like off the show. Her dog was really sick, and he was.
Oh, maybe because you're giving him wine. I mean, that might be the best thing to do.
I think she gave him wine after he was outside of the ICU, but she, according to what I read online, she after filming she would go to the hospital to be with the dog. So maybe that was why she was under a lot of stress, and maybe why she was looking a little older as the season progressed. But regardless, I wasn't a fan of this couple. I thought that they should have broken up. I thought Mark was pretty attractive, but the way that Jessica talked about him, you would think he was a dirty dog in the street. And so, right, it was just ridiculous. Like, it was really unfortunate that Mark didn't see this well before the wedding, and it almost as if
he still doesn't see it.
Right.
We saw the reunion show, and that to me was the last straw with Mark. Because I thought at the very least, I was like, okay, well, Mark was very naive. But he's going to see the show, and he's going to be like, oh, hell no. But then he sees the show. He comes on there. He's like, well, he's apologizing to her. And he was just like, I was like, Mark, you see the same show that we saw? Like, what was this all about? So I don't know. That dude, I think maybe he just had some issues. I think it also maybe goes back to just not having his dad around to kind of straighten him out. But I don't know what he was thinking.
Well, it seemed like he had a father figure in the home. So I'm not. That was his stepdad?
Yeah, I think it was his stepdad. I just think about if it was my own son, would I probably telling him right now? I was like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Like, this chick does not want to be with you. Don't let her embarrass you. And most important, embarrass the family.
Hello?
On national television.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
I know, right? And that, yeah, like, and at the reunion, that was the most unfortunate. He did, like, I think he probably feels bad for her, so maybe he didn't want to like drag her, dog her out.
The dog's not feeling good.
Well, I mean, he seems to be a really nice guy, but at the end of the day, yeah, sometimes you're too nice, and sometimes your attempts to be a stand-up guy kind of hurts you in the process. I mean, he just he looked kind of unfortunate. I don't want to like saying this, but he looked weak. Yeah. At the reunion, like he did look like he couldn't stand up for himself, and that's what women want. I mean, I'm sure there's someone out there who's like, I don't care, I want to be with Mark, but Mark, you can't be about somebody and not be about yourself. And I think that's what I saw from the show. Yeah. Anyways,
hope the best for Mark. Hopefully he learns this. He's a young guy, so hopefully he learns. All right, well, we'll move on to the next couple, Cameron and Lauren. This is an interesting couple. And this is where we start going against the grain a little bit. So Cameron and Lauren, it was the interracial couple on the show. Cameron's a white guy, Lauren's black female. And, they were kind of like, they call them America's sweetheart couple now. Everybody liked this couple. And honestly, they were the most stable couple. And they both seemed like good people. Cameron, it's like he was a cool guy. He was from Maine, but somehow he, knew all the black, rap lyrics. He was down with the black folks.
Well, I think was that song made up?
I think he made that song up. But the thing is, he was in a rap group apparently. Okay. I guess him and the other four black people in Maine. I guess they formed a group. But and then Lauren, she was a cool girl. She was from Detroit, and she had her head on her shoulders, and she was very attractive. So they, from that standpoint, they made a good couple. I like to get your thoughts on them being a black female. What were your thoughts on Cameron and Lauren being together?
It's the same thing that you said. They seem to both be very nice people who had their heads on their shoulders, who were interested in being in on the show for the reason of trying to find love. They were interested in the love experiment. I didn't notice that most of the people on this show had some type of social media like presence. Mm-hmm. So Lauren's job was a content creator. Mm-hmm. Here
wrong with that.
Right, here we are. But it seems as though that was her like job, is to be a content creator. And so Cameron was a scientist. And so I was interested to see how that connection would go. It didn't matter at all because their relationship seems to be they seem to have a lot of chemistry just right from the start. And so, yeah, I think that they were pretty good people. I think that between you and me as a black man and a black woman, I think we do have differences in how we view this relationship. But let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think just looking at it objectively, they were a good couple. And I think Cameron came in there with good intentions, cried a lot. But, he's like he was a good dude overall.
Wrong with that.
To a degree. But, he was a good guy, though. And Lauren, like, she was cool, too. my whole thing is I feel like with these kind of shows, there's always an underlying agenda. And one of the things I did notice, and you showed me this too, black women got very excited about this couple, and you included. You kind of gave a little woohoo when he chose her. And
It wasn't a woohoo. It was a
what
aw.
I have what I have noticed is that a lot of black women have an issue when it's a black man with a white female on the show. And it was just very curious to me how this couple here, the white male and a black female, became America's sweetheart, including the black female sweetheart couple. So why were you so excited about this couple, this arrangement?
I wouldn't, and we had this conversation earlier, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was the I was excited for this couple. I think, and this is selfishly to say, it was really me being excited for the black female. I think a lot of times, y'all know this. Please, someone prove me wrong. But look at media and how black women, typically ones those of us that have two black parents,
Mm.
but even those who don't, if you are considered or perceived to be black, and you're on the media, we are typically portrayed to be seen as like mean, with a huge attitude, ugly. We're typically, if you do see us on television, that we're the most overweight ones. And so it's like I often see black women portrayed in a negative light. Now, over time, you've seen um, a major change in how black women are being portrayed with television shows such as Scandal and Grey's Anatomy and How to Get Away with Murder, shows that are produced and written by Shonda Rhimes.
Yep.
So I mean, like, so you've seen a change, and I'm sure there are countless other shows out there that are starting to change that narrative. But I know that black women initially and mostly are shown in a negative light. And then if you look at it from the reality TV standpoint, where a lot of the time we watch based on people's just reactions towards black women in general, we don't win. I mean, only recently we saw a black bachelorette, and that was just the first in what, almost 23 years or something like that. And so for me, watching this couple, yes, I mean, I was excited for Lauren and Cameron, and it was mostly because I was excited for Lauren. A lot of times you don't see a black or African American women revered or appreciated to the extent that Cameron appreciated her. And honestly, you don't really see that from black men. If you do see black men going for somebody, they're not black or they barely look black. And someone proved me wrong. Thank you. And so, well, I don't know. What do you?
I'll prove you wrong. No. Yeah, you're right about a lot of what you said is correct. But what I would say is you could say the same thing about black men and our portrayal in the media. Also, a lot of times you don't see a black man in the media unless they're a criminal or thug.
Yeah.
Or I mean, again, nothing. There's nothing. I have nothing against the LGBT community, but it does seem that they want to push that where you'll see a black man as being homosexual or bisexual, which we'll get to in a moment. In the media. So I feel like just the same things you were saying about black females, you can say the same things about black men and our portrayal in the media. So why is it that it seems like a lot of black women have a problem with black men getting with a white female, and yet they were okay with Lauren being with a white male?
And so, yes. So thank you for like kind of moving along our thought process. But I think also you see the how black women are portrayed in the media, but then you also see real life. And there's a growing having an interracial relationship is more acceptable now than it was in the past. It still occurred in the past. Let's not forget that, but it's more widely acceptable by society to date interracially. And amongst black families and black individuals, black men are more likely to marry and date interracially than black women. That is a fact. And so a lot of black women when you see an interracial couple, you're more likely to see a black man with a black woman, and so, or a black man with a white woman, and there are feelings associated with that because you do know that there are a lot of black women out there who are single and who might have a hard time dating, and that's kind of sad to see. I think a lot of times black women are not chosen, and I'll say this: watch that show Flirty Dancing that got canceled. There's a show, another reality show on Fox that was called Flirty Dancing, and there were some black women on that show. That it was another dating show where the premise was that you learn a dance off screen and then you come together and you see the person for the first time and you really develop a connection with that person by the choreographed dance that you did. I mean, and many people watched the first show, and the black man on that show had the opportunity to pick the white woman or the black woman, and he chose the white woman. No problem with that. Like, I mean, you choose who you have a better connection with. But the thing is that black women, in my opinion, believe as though they are never picked. They are never the first. They're never the one that they're sought after. And why is that? I would like to kind of see, like, if anyone thinks otherwise, why do you think otherwise? But I honestly believe that um, black men might not be as interested in black women as they are in other races. And it's definitely apparent from the media.
I agree and disagree with you on that. So I think you're totally right. Obviously, that I think it's a higher percentage of black men that are with white females and vice versa. But what I disagree with you on though is the idea that black women are just not chosen or not picked. I think it's actually the opposite. I think there are a lot of cases where I think black women don't make the best choices when it comes to the men they're with. I mean, and I think a lot of times you see, wealthier, more upscale black women who oftentimes will go back to, dealing with, honestly, lower life, black dudes, black dudes who in and out of jail or who may have multiple kids or multiple different women.
Why is that?
Because that's what they're attracted to, and so at the end of the day, they gotta look at themselves and say, well, why am I attracted to that? Why am I picking this? And if you're attracted to that, that's fine and all, but then don't turn around and blame black men, saying there's no good black men out there, because a lot of those black dudes who end up with white women are the same black dudes that a lot of these black women would call corny or would say, hey, you're acting white, or you're not this, you're not that, and now all of a sudden they're with the white girl, and now you want them all of a sudden. So that's just funny how that works. So that's my perspective on it, but I can see it on both ends. But going piggybacking off of that though, I did find it interesting that this Cameron dude, if you replaced him with a black dude and he acted like Cameron did, and that Cameron was a cool guy, he's a nice guy and everything, but if he acted the way he did, I think this guy would be considered to be square and be considered lame, probably by Lauren,
Not by
and by a lot of the black women. But I think that when it comes to how black women interact with white men, they have a different standard than they do with black men. I think if you're a black man, you got to come correct with black women. You got to have a certain level of swag, certain level of style. Yeah, he could rap a little bit, but I mean, come on, it went all that. You know what I'm saying? So I just think there's a different standard. Whereas with Cameron, if he can just cut a couple bars, everybody's like, oh my God, look at this guy rap. I mean, you saw the difference between how the black mom reacted, where she was just head over heels for this guy. Oh, he's just unbelievable. I can't believe you actually like my daughter? What? Whereas the father, he was a lot more reserved on. He's like, well, wait a minute, like, how are you going to treat my daughter? How is this going to have you? You're white. So I think that's just a difference between how black men and black women kind of view the relationship. But I do think there's something to black women, kind of like not holding white men to the same extent they do black men. And, I think you have plenty of black dudes out there who probably have a similar personality as Cameron has, but they wouldn't get the same kind of reception as he did because there's a different expectation level.
And I think that both of our opinions operate within the same environment. So I think both of us are correct. I don't think that's like one is right and one is wrong. But it's a different perspective. And so, like I said, I like Cameron and Lauren together. I think that they're a good couple. But I actually do agree that if Cameron was black and he had the same exact personality, I don't know if Lauren would like him as much. I don't know. And I do see your point in that a lot of black men who don't behave in the stereotypical Black way
Mhm.
might not be chosen by Black women, and that might push them to get with people of other races.
Mm.
At the end of the day, if love who you love, interracial marriage is your opinion, is your choice. Um, that's all I'll say to that.
Well, what I will say, just because again, this show is against the going against the grain. That's the whole point of it. Um, Again, like I said, objectively, this is a good couple. They sound good people, but it is something. It is interesting to me how you have all these other dysfunctional kind of personalities and couples, but the one like really stable, solid looking couple was the interracial one. And and from my understanding, they went through like hundreds of different people during this process. It wasn't just the 12 people in this group, and there were apparently other couples who got married. They just happened to highlight these individual couples. So I feel like each couple was chosen for a particular reason, and I feel like they made a concerted effort to make sure that the one couple that really stood out as being most solid, honestly, it was the interracial couple with the white male and the black female. And so I do wonder if they were trying to subliminally put out a message there that the interracial relationship, especially if it's, the black white male and the black female, is the way to go. What do you think about that?
I don't know about all that, but I do know that I don't really know if love is really as blind as the showmakers are trying to make it. Cameron dated a Black girl before,
Okay.
I think it would have been different if Barnett and Lauren got together, or Kenny and Lauren, or something like that, where like individuals who probably never dated a Black woman before got with her. But Cameron had, like, it seemed as though he was aware of the culture. He might be more interested in Black women, honestly. And so I am a little bit more skeptical about whether or not this is truly like love is blind kind of thing. It might be more the case for Lauren versus Cameron. Um, so I think that's really all I'll say about that.
So with that said, I think we'll move on
Yeah.
to the last couple, the black couple, Carlton and Diamond. So all right, so this is actually the couple, again, going back to how I feel about agendas. This is the couple that actually didn't make it beyond the first stage. They made it to the island after they saw each other and met each other, but they didn't make it to the altar or meet the family or any of that other stuff. So Carlton kind of came off early on as sort of like the jokester type guy, and trying to have swag and all this other stuff. But that kind of came across as a little corny to me. But that's kind of how he tried to portray himself early on. But obviously, we found out more about him later on in the show.
I'll just say it. I immediately perceived Carlton to be gay. When I first, before he met and even started talking to Diamond, I just felt as though that's like just my opinion. That's what I thought. And when it turned out that he was bisexual, I was just like, I knew it. I knew it. I just felt like I could tell, and I know that you can't tell with many people, but Carlton's personality is it just, and I think I don't know. Did he say that he come from like a family where like his father was a reverend or something
I
like
believe you
that?
mentioned that. I don't
So
remember saying
I
that.
just all that language, I felt as though he was homosexual. It turns out he's bisexual, which yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I was personally, I wasn't shocked by it. I was a little surprised. I think he started saying some things to sort of hint that that's what he was going to reveal to her. Um, I guess I took kind of a different angle on it. To me, I actually thought had he handled it differently, I thought she would have given him a chance. And I think he kind of got caught up in his own insecurities. So when he started revealing it to her that hey, he had past homosexual relationships and he was bisexual. I think had he just been comfortable with it and just say, hey, look, this is what it is, and give her an opportunity to digest it. I think she was trying to actually like process it a little bit. I mean, that's a lot to put on somebody, at one time. I don't think he gave her a chance to even process it or think about it. And his reaction, him just immediately blowing up, I think is what really caused the problems.
And I think that he felt as though if he told her, he wanted her to get to know him without the label of being a bisexual.
Right.
He felt as though if he told her, I mean, I'm assuming this, I think this is what he
Well,
said
that's what he
too.
said. Yeah.
If he told her that that he was bisexual before, like in the rooms, that message would have gotten to all the girls, and she wouldn't have wanted him. No one would have wanted him because he's had experiences where people have judged him because he was bisexual, and they didn't want him after he said that. Um, and so that's why he decided not to say that. Now, the thing for me is that unfortunately that's reality.
Mhm.
You know, when you are who you are, according to a
Mhm.
lot of people.
Mhm.
And so individuals have the right to not want you because of that. I mean, I have the right to not want to date someone who also is interested
Mhm.
in men. And that's not necessarily saying that you're a bad person. That's not necessarily saying that I don't like you as a human being. It's just that I have a right, just like you have a right to be only want to date brunettes. You have a right to only want to date whoever for whatever reason. To only want to date a person of a certain skin color or tone. You know, it might be shallow, it might be superficial, but that's the reality of the fact that we are, as human beings, our own human beings, and we have the right to make our own choices. I think it was very unfair for Carlton to get mad at Diamond for asking questions after he sprung this on her on the date, and he was acting very different once they got to the hotel. He was pretty much a different person, and it seemed as if he was trying too hard. I knew it from the jump.
Well, I'm glad you knew it from the jump. Well, look, here's my thought, and this is where we start. I guess we'll go against the grain a little bit here. My question is, why did he feel the need to tell her in the first place? Because my viewpoint on it is, at the end of the day, if you're saying that you're gonna be with this person and you're not gonna be with anybody else, regardless if you've been in the past with women, you've been in the past with men, whatever it's been, if you're just gonna be with this one person, then why do you feel the need to go into your past sexual history on that that early on the stage? And the reason I think he might have done it is because he still has inclinations to want to be with both men and women. And I think that's where the issue came in. I think he's still trying to be with both sexes, and I think he was trying to see if she'd be okay with that. Because otherwise, why did he feel the need to divulge all of that if it's not really important to him anymore?
Well, I think it's because he wanted to put it all at the table. I mean, I think maybe he really wanted to marry Diamond, and so he wanted to kind of let her know everything about him. There's a video. He was on Real Housewives of Atlanta, as an assistant, and in it he looks very, like, his whole demeanor is different. In my opinion, he looks a little bit more feminine. He portrays himself to be a little bit more feminine. His look is different. He has no beard. It's just, I mean, so if she saw that, she would be, because I think she would be like, what is happening? And so I think that for him, he wanted to be transparent and say, okay, this is who I am. I hope you accept me still. And I mean, I feel for him because um, I can't see where he wants to be with a woman, and maybe because of his status, he because of who he is, uh women shut him down, but women have the right to do that. So regardless of the fact, I think that women have a right to choose who they want to be with and who they don't want to be with. And let's be super honest. I want to bring this up. This is a notion against the grain. This might make people upset, but within the we have to think about, like, the history of uh relationships amongst the Black community and amongst Black women. And Black women are the even though the numbers are going down, Black women are more likely to be diagnosed with HIV than any other female in the or woman in this country. And why is that? Often it's because women have dated and had sex with Black males who also have sex with men and have contracted the virus. Now, I'm not putting anything onto anybody about anything, but I will say that there is a concern in the Black female community about dating a man who is considered to be on the down low, or um who might secretly also be interested in having sex with men, and because of that there's concern.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid concern. I understand that. I guess why I would go back to again is you're talking present tense versus past tense. So if we're talking about someone who is still actively engaging that behavior, who is on the down low, who is doing these things, then that is putting that person at risk. But if you're talking about someone who has done that in the past, then if they're not doing that action anymore, then that no longer puts the woman at risk anymore. So that's the question I would have: is him feeling the need to divulge information? It almost sounds to me like because he said he called himself gender fluid. He said he was fluid. He said he was fluid, and so it sounds to me like this is someone that really wants to continue with both sexes, and I think that's where the issue lies. But also, what I would come back to is this notion of everyone needing to be so honest up front. I think everyone when you're dating, it's your representative, and I think so we probably put our best foot forward. We're trying to get to know each other, women and men. I mean, if you look at if you look at Diamond, for example, I mean, she had weave on. I mean, she looked good and everything, but she had a weave. She had things that weren't naturally for her because she was putting her best foot forward. And then as you get to know the person, then you divulge more and more information. And you have a lot of women out there, honestly, who are with guys that they may not tell them that they've had sex with other guys in the past, but they're still currently, engaged in that behavior. And that's what's putting the women at risk. So, him coming forward and saying that, actually is a good thing in some ways because he's kind of saying, "Hey, this is what I've done in the past," and he's letting them know. But it puts him at a disadvantage from those other guys who aren't saying anything and they're still doing it actively. So,
And on his defense, this is this is within a matter of weeks that they are, or yeah, weeks that they're dating, and so he might not have divulged this information to her this soon in a normal relationship, but this is a dating experiment where these people at the end of the month have to decide whether or not they're going to marry each other, and they are legally bound by the show to get married. And so I think that he wanted to be as truthful and honest as possible to her. And then kind of going back to my point about being on the down low and HIV and whatnot, I'm not saying that any of these individuals are like infected or have anything, or that if you do date someone who is bisexual, that you run the risk of getting. But I mean, think about the population of African American women who have been diagnosed with HIV in our community, and how they get that diagnosis. It's from having heterosexual sex. Let's be honest, let's be real, and let's not deny the fact that a lot of Black women are concerned about that issue when dating Black men who do also have sex with other men. Okay. Someone prove me wrong, someone tell me wrong about that. But regardless, I think the way that Carlton and Diamond handled the situation was not great. I don't think the show really I don't think the show producers really showed all of what Diamond said during their interaction. I think that Diamond might have said some things that kind of set Carlton off, and then that was still no excuse for Carlton to call her out her name. That was still, and Carlton had to accept the fact that Diamond did feel like she was lied to, because he never brought that up. They spent a lot of time together in those rooms, and not once did he say, "You know what? I might have," and he could have even framed it in another way. He didn't necessarily have to say he was bisexual, but he really wanted her to know that. But he could have said, "I've had sex with men. I've had instances where I've had sex with men." I mean, it's the reality of it. And you want to be with somebody who accepts you for who you are regardless. So if someone doesn't want to be with you because you've had sex with men, then you don't want to be with that person, do you?
Yeah, I think what you touched on before, I think is a good point. It's about trust at the end of the day, because you were saying about how someone who's having sex with men, who have sex with women and men, that's putting the woman at a greater risk potentially for HIV. And I think it's the same thing if you have someone who's just having sex with someone of the opposite gender too. So if you have guys out there having sex with women, women, they could have HIV also. Absolutely. So it really goes back to, do you trust this person to only be with you, or do you think they're still going back and forth? And I think the other part is, I think she actually, like I was saying before, I think she would have been more on board with it had he been more comfortable with himself, and had he been more understanding and saying, "Look, I know this is going to be something that you might not be comfortable with. but I'm comfortable with myself, and I'm telling you this is what I've done in the past. But and when you digest it in your own way, I think she might have at least considered it. But I think the fact that he wasn't comfortable with himself and he starts flipping out, that is ultimately, I think, what kind of put it over the top to where she didn't trust him at that point. Because not only now have you kind of withheld this information from me initially, now you're acting in a very kind of like aggressive manner towards me immediately. So now I don't know who you are, and I think that's where the whole trust issue just flies out the window. So I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Some people I think may have more of an issue with it than others, but I think ultimately it goes back to, do you trust the partner that you're with and how they're going to behave.
And so had he been more upfront from the beginning, they might have been able to talk about it, and maybe stay together. So we don't know. We don't know. I hope that especially Diamond uh does well.
Yeah.
I've heard that um she's received a lot of backlash saying that she's biphobic, and um that's ridiculous to me. I don't even think that she appeared to be biphobic.
Now, there were some scenes apparently that were cut out that we don't know about. Maybe that's what people were referring to, where she was
Okay.
apparently saying some stereotypical gay stuff to him.
Mm.
I think he was talking something about how he likes a lot of Beyonce songs, and so she should have known he was gay because of that. That's my understanding. So I think that's what people are kind of going back to, the whole biphobic thing. But outside of that, I agree. She shouldn't have gotten that backlash.
I hear that Carter's also got a lot of backlash too from the internet. So I hope that things die down and they can both kind of go about their separate ways. I did see on the reunion that he like really apologized for calling her out her name, for saying something about her hair,
Right.
which
That
was really dirty and
embarrassing.
disgusting. And I won't get into that, but I don't see a lot of, let me stop with that. And he apologized for her. Now I saw an interview that they did by Entertainment Tonight where they had this really kind of tense interaction where they were both trying to say their point of view, and Diamond really was just trying to state that she probably would never want to date him because Carlton asked her on a date and she said no after the show. And Diamond said that the reason why she would never date him is because of the disrespect and the trust. But then Carlton was saying like he wants someone to like respect him, and he wants to be accepted for who he is, and Diamond was pretty much just saying like she doesn't want to be disrespected, she doesn't want to be called out her name. She witnessed, or she didn't witness, but she has an aunt that was murdered due to domestic violence, and she got teary-eyed from kind of stating that to the interviewer, and Carlton didn't even hear that. Carlton in that moment was brought it back to himself and didn't even acknowledge the fact that he really hurt her by calling her out of her name and acting the way that he did towards her, which led to the huge negative interaction, probably where she said some possibly perceived biphobic things. And so he didn't even acknowledge what she said, and that's when they started having a kind of a negative interaction again in front of the Entertainment Tonight interviewer. So to me, Carlton
came out bad in this. I mean, he was bad all around.
Yeah.
I mean, so for me, my thing is, I think at the end of the day, it does come back to trust, and I think he kind of blew that from the beginning, and then his reaction to it was even worse. So I guess one last piece I want to talk about on all this is kind of like, once again, I think sort of the agenda that a lot of these shows, do have, where I feel like they probably already knew or had spoken to Carlton before, and they knew that he was bisexual and that was something that he was, struggling with. And I feel like that's one that's maybe, I think maybe he'd been put up to revealing that, later on in the process for the dramatic element of the show. But I think also because I think they want to kind of continue to push his agenda, of presenting black men as homosexual or bisexual. But I also think on top of that, they also wanted to show the another dysfunctional black couple, because again, we only had, it's funny to me this show was filmed in Atlanta, but we only had one black couple out of the group, and they had to make that one the most dysfunctional out of the group. So I think that kind of goes back again to this whole sort of agenda about how they want to represent black people. And it was just sad that Carlton went to that place of talking about her weave falling off and all those kind of stereotypical, just black arguments. And and just showing that dysfunction and that that divide. I thought Diamond handled herself very well. I mean, when somebody drops that kind of thing on you, I mean, it's hard to handle all that. And I thought she was just doing what most people would do, asking questions, trying to get a better understanding of it.
Right.
And the way Carlton reacted was just just a disgrace. So that was kind of sad to see. But I do feel like the producers, they kind of probably egged some of that on, and I think also they made a concerted effort to make that couple be the black couple out of the group.
And I believe he was the only black man that
Right.
was in that group.
Well,
Like,
at least that was televised.
I mean, like, here in Atlanta, Georgia, come on.
Right.
Not one other black man that is heterosexual to kind of see how that would work within
Right.
the group. That would have been very interesting to see if he had chosen or gotten with another female, white or black.
Right.
And
had he gone with the white female, the black female lynch mob would have been after him. So I would have loved to have seen. As a matter, that would have been a great test. What would have happened if we had a black male with a white female, and then we had the Cameron Lauren group? I would have loved to have seen the reaction on that. That would have been interesting.
Honestly, I don't think people would have had a bad reaction to it. I know there's a double standard in regards to how black women perceive interracial relationships with white men and black women versus black men and white women. But if it was as honest and true as Cameron's and Lauren's relationship was portrayed, then I don't think people would have hated it.
Oh, you're in a fairy tale world now. Come on, give me a break. You would have hated it. Get out of here. But yeah,
no, that's not true.
Yeah, so that's my whole thing with the Cameron Lauren thing. Just on his face is great. But I think situations like Carlton and Diamond, I think that kind of shows that there is an agenda to try to put black couples in more of a negative light. So, like I said, I think overall the show is very entertaining. We were watching it for a day and a half straight, and we're looking forward to season 2. So, again, thank you guys for listening, and as always, stay against the grain. Peace.